Hi, y'all. Welcome to our panel that we're going to have in just a minute. But as I think you're all aware, one of the highlights of the hockey season happened late in the year when the Blackhawks were forced into an emergency situation. Now, for those who don't know, there was a rule put in before last year in the NHL that every home team has to have an amateur goalie available in case there's an emergency situation. And that guy who was at the rink that night can play for either team. So, because it's happened in the recent past that there's been some situations where a guy gets sick, a guy gets hurt, all of a sudden the team that dresses two goalies has got nobody to play the position. And so it's created some really uncomfortable situations for a couple teams. So they put that rule in before last season began. So at every game in the NHL, the home team has to provide an amateur goalie to be available in case both of the regular guys get hurt. So as you're well aware, that happened for the Blackhawks late in the year. And some of you might have been watching the game, some of you might have been there. But for those who weren't, let's sort of relive what happened. There's a video package that the great television staff put together for what happened that night. Let's go back to an amazing circumstance and one of the highlights of the season for the Blackhawks late in the year at the United Center.
Definitely, it was opening day for baseball, but we had to go to the bullpen a couple times today. It was one of those interesting things that you don't see very often, and that both goalies played extremely well.
Well, the initial shock happened when I had to dress, and then I think you just kind of black out after that. There's always a chance. I mean, you come to enough games, guys do get hurt. You just don't think that it's going to happen to you. I mean, there's a lot of games that are played every night, and it's a unique story still. So it's fun to be part of.
It was great. It was pretty cool to see him go in there. The guys were saying when he was sitting in the locker room there, he was cool as a cucumber, and he just went out there and Christ took a few shots. I was like, oh, this guy looks pretty good. So, but he was great. I think the boys were doing everything they could to try and help him out, and he made some big saves, and it was a fun night.
I mean, from my perspective, this is a dream regardless. This is something that no one can ever take away from me. It's something that I can go home and tell my kids, and they can tell, their friends and whatnot. So it's just a ton of fun and a lot of good memories.
Stops in a row to preserve a victory.
I gotta get this guy.
Before that, here's a chance for Tanev. Nice save by Delia.
Delia all right here?
This is Scott Foster who's going to have to come into the game. There is 36-year-old Scott Foster, who came to the rink as the substitute goalie, would be available to either team should either club have both goalies get hurt. That has happened to the Hawks. Little encouragement for Kevin Dineen. Look at Joel Benville. Watch him. Hey, who's this guy? Well, you tell him if you get through the next last 14 minutes.
Hey, you know what? You get to the show, no matter how. And there's his first save. So,
and listen to the crowd, and he makes his first save, and a huge salute from this sold-out arena. Morrissey, now a quick shot. Ryan that went up off the glass.
So Scott Foster with a 4-goal lead will try and snap the Winnipeg Jets' 6-game winning streak.
I was just scrolling around during the break, and how many people are now tuning into the game because he's in. The word's out that, hey, this guy that hasn't played in 15 years is playing goal for the Blackhawks, and what an amazing night. Could you imagine? He's coming to the rink to be the third goalie. He comes all the time. They give him tickets. He watches the game from wherever. He throws his gear into the back room. And then Forsberg gets hurt playing soccer. Oh, wait a minute. Now you're the backup.
Top carries. Top. Backhand shot hit the side of the net. Rebound to the Hawks. Then a Buffalo takeaway. He shoots. And a save by Foster. Gets a big roar of approval after his Johnny's Ice House veteran. Hawks win! Hawks win! And look at Scott Foster. He comes in and makes 7 stops in a row to preserve a victory.
And the #1 star of the game from the Blackhawks, number 90, Scott Foster.
Scott, last night you were playing at Johnny's Ice House, and tonight you make your NHL debut in front of this great crowd. Describe what the last 24 hours have been like for you.
Well, it's a little different when a few hours ago you're working your day job and then you're living your dream. So it's fun.
You know, hockey is the only sport where anybody can literally suit up and play on any given night. I know it sounds like something out of a movie, but this year in Chicago, it really happened. After injuries to the Blackhawks, 2 top goalies, 36-year-old accountant, and emergency backup Scott Foster made his debut in the 3rd period of the regular season game and proceeded to stonewall the Winnipeg Jets, stopping 7 shots and helping the Hawks hold on for the win. Foster won Chicago's team belt and star of the game. We got him here tonight. Everyone, give it up for my emergency co-presenter, Scott Foster. Beautiful. You know, this was really a great opportunity for Scott. But what that piece didn't show you is that, you know, I've been the emergency goalie for the past 20 years in Chicago. And Rocky Schwartz called me, but that night, and well, I just pulled a hammy because I was dancing at Thunder Down Under. Get a chance. So good for you, Johnny H&R Block.
You know, Jim, I'm excited to be here, but I got to make this quick.
Oh, yeah, I guess now that you're a big NHL goalie, you're probably in a hurry to hit the gym and do some serious training for next season?
No, actually, I got to get back to work.
Work, huh? Great. Any advice for any of these kids out there who dream of following in your footsteps?
Yeah, I sure do. First, I'd suggest a major in accounting with a master's in accountancy.
Okay, duly noted.
Well, let's say hello to our panel here this afternoon, starting with the man of the moment then and the man of the moment now. From beer league to big league, here is the star of that night and the star of today, Scott Foster.
Got the North Star guiding me. It's the fire burning inside of me.
Also on our panel here this afternoon, the goaltending coach of the Chicago Blackhawks, and boy, did he ever coach well that night. Here's Jimmy Waite. Also on our panel here today, one of the general managers of the Rockford Ice Hogs, very involved in Blackhawks management. He was a goalie when he played, so he can talk a little bit about this situation. Mark Bernard. And an extremely important piece of the Blackhawks puzzle, one of the guys who does tireless work for not enough credit. We try to give it to him on the air once in a while, but these guys are unbelievable at what they do. They're very important parts of the organization. Here's the Director of Equipment Management, Mr. Troy Parchment. All right, so Scotty.
Pat, can I stop you right there before we start?
Sure.
I just want to get something on the record. You know, as a minor league goalie for 13 years, I'm looking at this panel. I'm the most jealous guy up here right now. Because I would have given up 13 years for those 13 minutes. That was unbelievable.
I believe that. So, Scotty, how in the world did it go? first of all, how many games did you act as the emergency guy last season?
So in September, I think I picked about a dozen games, picked up an odd game here and there. So just random day at work where you're killing your lunch hour, and for some reason, I guess March 29th was something I should pick. But yeah, no rhyme or reason other than kind of when it works into family schedule and whatnot. Yeah, so random set of circumstances.
Well, and you're coming to the rink expecting to probably sit in the locker room and sort of watch the game on TV, and all of a sudden they're telling you, well, you better get dressed. The guy that was going to start is hurt. So how did the whole night work from the time you sort of came into the locker room?
You know, it was a little frantic at first, trying to figure out where they were going to have you go, what was really going on. Was I really getting dressed? Was I just going to hang out with, you know, just in case? So you kind of they finally get you set up. You see your equipment all set up in that locker room, and that's when you realize, okay, this is real. And back when I first kind of elected to do this role, I figured that would be the peak, if at all. The idea of pulling on, at the time, any NHL sweater, and as it turns out, a Blackhawk one to make it even better. You know, you're just going to soak that in, and you're not thinking at the time like you're not going in that game. There's no chance you're going in that game. Maybe you're praying that you're not going in that game.
So all of a sudden, I mean, you're watching. I think you were sitting with Taser and Crow, right?
Yep.
And it happens. Dealey gets hurt. You see him being helped off the ice. Now what's going through the brain?
Well, you definitely know that your heart can go from you know, just chilling watching a hockey game with some NHL guys to where you're about to catch it in your hand about a foot away from your chest. And I'm sure there was a lot of things said to me at that moment, whether it be joking or encouragement, but I can't tell you that I heard any of that.
Well, you know, a couple years ago, people may remember the same sort of thing happened. The Hawks were on the road in Philadelphia, and Corey Crawford had an emergency appendicitis that in the morning, and all of a sudden, Stan Bowman has to go find a goalie, and there was a guy who was coaching that morning in Philly, coaching a youth team, who was on their list of available goalies. And this is before you had to have an emergency guy at the rink. So the Flyers find this guy. He walks into the locker room. I mean, he's got blue jeans on and his old hockey bag, and all of a sudden Seabrook and Taves are finding him for being out of uniform. You know, he didn't have a suit on. Any stuff like that when you walked in? You get any zingers from anybody?
It was mostly just kind of the welcome to the dressing room, introducing themselves. You were there kind of right as they were going on for warm-up, so I think guys are still kind of getting ready to play. So I didn't really get much of that. Fortunately for me, I'm coming from work, so I have a little bit better chance of being sort of professionally dressed. I won't say that I'm perfect by any means. So yeah, I think it was just a timing thing, but I think you're just trying to stay out of the way and just soak up the moment. You know, the stories like Philly there and stuff, that's what you think is the most that's going to happen. So you're just being a little bit of a fly on the wall, I think, in the whole thing, and just see what happens behind the scenes. It's been a few years since I've been in a locker room setting like that. It's a little bit nicer than Johnny's, but you know, it's a room full of hockey guys, so you can fit in. I mean, I've done this my whole life, so they become just another bunch of hockey players at that time.
By the way, you mentioned Johnny's, and I'm so sad. This is one of those nights that I really was not paying attention to my phone. There was a lot of stuff going on, and amazingly, a buddy of mine who plays in one of your leagues sent me a picture of the bar at Johnny's Ice House. The bar is full of hockey players in full equipment and referees. They have stopped the game at Johnny's. Hey, Scotty's playing for the Hawks, come on. So they stopped the game. And I'm so sad I didn't see that picture till after. I wish I could have gotten it on the air that night. Jimmy, what goes through the goalie coach's mind when all of a sudden the number 3 guy's coming in?
Well, I'm in the press box. Is this working?
Yeah, you're
so
good.
I'm in the press box, and then Scotty comes in, and a few fans in front of me, they know I sit in the press box. They all turn towards me and like this. You know? So I'm like, I don't know that guy either, you know. And we're all laughing, and then you see Joel on the bench just having a big laugh. So that was a moment we'll never forget for sure.
Did you ever had you guys met before that, or?
No, actually, after the game, I asked Cuddy, where do you sit during the games? Well, right beside you almost. I'm like, really? So don't be afraid to come and say hi, you know. I didn't know him, and so we never talked before.
Bernie, as I said, you played the position for a long time in the minor leagues. You've run a minor league team for a long time. I imagine there's a couple weird goalie stories or anything similar to this that turned into some emergency kind of situation.
Well, actually, after I was coaching and I was running a team over in Europe, it was my first year back in North America down in Norfolk, Virginia with the Admirals when they were still the American League team of the Blackhawks. And I get a call early one morning. I was on my way into the office from Al McIsaac, the GM then, and says, "You got your gear with you?" I go, "Yeah, it's at the rink." He goes, "Both our goalies are sick." At the time, it was Corey Crawford and Mike Brodeur. He goes, "You got to practice this morning. You got to take pregame skates." So I'm out there for pregame skate. I'm 38 years old at that point, and haven't had my gear on, and at the end of practice, Mike Havlin skates over to me, gives me a pat on the pad, and says, "Hey, the boys are going to work hard for you tonight. Be ready." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Well, you're starting." And he goes, "There's a snowstorm in Washington, so we can't get anybody through." So I'm like, just like Scott said, your heartbeat goes from 0 to 60 in a moment. And I remember I went in the referee's room, had a little sleep, and I wake up and Al tells me, "Hey, we were able to get a goalie and you just got to back up." I'm like, "Oh, perfect, I can do that." So I go out for warm-up and the other team is just chirping me all warm-up. Here's this old guy out there. I come off after warm-up, they say, "Oh, Mike Havlin wants to see you." So I go to the coach's office. He goes, "Oh, Corey, we had a few bags of intravenous put into him. He's feeling a little better. He's going to be able to back up." And I said, "Are you kidding me? I've gone from starting to backing up to scratch in a matter of 2 hours?" So I put my suit back on and became president of the team again for the night. So, and then actually 2 years ago in Rockford, 5 minutes into the game, one of our goalies got hurt. So I called the league and said, "We got 55 minutes left in the game. What happens if our other goalie gets injured?" They said, "Well, you can sign a tryout contract right now, and you can go in, or if you don't sign it, if he gets hurt, you got to put a player in net." So I got dressed. I had to sign myself to a contract. And,
overpaid.
Yeah. I get grief. The AHL commissioner, Dave Andrews, always gives me grief. He goes, "You didn't even put yourself down for the minimum." And I said, "Well, I think after 13 years, I deserved a little bit more than the minimum." So I remember my son they were on their way to a hockey tournament, and he kept texting me about something. And I said, "Stop texting me. I got to get dressed." He goes, "Oh, okay. Wait, what?" And then he was begging his mom to turn around, and I'm like, "Nope, don't come back. I'm not playing, believe me." So I've come close a few times, but I haven't got back in there.
You also came close in the Old Timers game in Minnesota when
Yes.
I was playing that game, and I asked you to bring your gear, but
you had the bad hamstring. I was for sure thought you were going to pull the shoot.
Hey, Parchi, you've dealt with a lot of hockey players. Now, you get these situations presented in the last year, and, Scott's one of several emergency goalies that, are at games in case you need them. How do you deal with that? Does everybody get a different number? Do you have just one sort of on the side and you put, he walked out there with a perfect nameplate, and it looked like his jersey had been in place for 15 years. So how do you make that happen?
Well, it made it look like we were organized and prepared for it, but we really weren't. So the one thing we should have learned is after Szymborski, we should have been more prepared for it, but those are things you don't think are ever going to happen. So it's the same thing with Scott. So when we found out it was like 10-7, so I'm trying to be composed, but really I'm panicking inside. So I'm running down to the loading dock because I've never met Scott or the other backup goalies before. And I asked Frankie, who who runs the loading dock and parks all the cars, I said, is the backup goalie here yet? And he goes, no. I says, well, when he gets here, get him to the dressing room right away because we need him. And in the meantime, I'm running to the warehouse to try and get a nameplate made like they make upstairs in the store. And in the meantime, I come back and DJ had already made the jersey with the name. He says, oh, it's all done and stuff. So then that's the biggest thing is you need jerseys, sticks, and skates to play a game. And that was all fine. And then it was pretty good from there. I tried to be, when I first met Scott, I tried to be composed and but really I was panicking inside.
That's two of us.
And then from there it was like they said, well, it was no big rush because Scott couldn't go for warm-up because if he did, then if he had to go into the game, he couldn't get warm-up shots. So he stayed in the dressing room and that helped later, even though you're only allowed 6 shots.
Yeah, that's a normal warm-up.
Yeah.
It's a normal warm-up.
So
and I just want to say, though, Troy doesn't give his staff enough credit. Over the years, Troy, Jimmy Heinzelman, and DJ Kogut, they do an unbelievable job when things come up very quickly. A good example was even last week during our development camp after the passing of Ray Emery, making sure that all the players had Ray's a sticker with Ray's number on it on their helmets for the week. They do an unbelievable job in making sure that our players are represented well and do a great job.
Bernie, well said. Yep.
Well, and another thing, like DJ and Jimmy, who we all work together, and they make us all look so good, that Jimmy actually had the presence of mind in the third period to make Scott a nameplate for his stall. So the PR department goes, oh boy, didn't that look good after the game when they were doing interviews, and he actually had a nameplate, and I go, oh really? Oh, okay.
But those are the details. I mean, these guys don't miss anything. It's what makes them, so incredible. Let's get off topic here, Parchi, on that just for a second. I think it was the last game of the year we played. There was that awful tragedy, a bus crash in Western Canada. The entire hockey world was in mourning. And the Hawks are in Winnipeg getting ready to play the game. You are not even at home, and I believe the Hawks and the Jets decided, instead of nameplates, let's put Broncos on everybody's jersey. Everybody wore they wore their numbers, but Broncos was the nameplate on everybody's jersey. I'm thinking, you're dressed in 20 guys each team. How in the world, I assume it was late morning that the word came down. How in the world did you guys pull that off?
Well, and we played at home the night before, so we got to Winnipeg late, and I think I woke up around 9 or 9:30, and I saw the text from Jason McMaster from Winnipeg to call him, and he talked about Mr. Shipman, their president, wanted to do this, and it wasn't an issue of asking the league if we could do this or whatever, because it's I was shook. I found out the night before because my cousin texted me because he lives in Humboldt. And Jason, when he presented this idea in the morning, I said, yeah, for sure. So we always have, every guy already has 2 jerseys. So we had backup jerseys. So everybody, I just gave Jason at 10:30 the whole backup set. And his jersey cresters did an amazing job. They stripped all the names off and made the Bronco nameplates. And we had the jerseys back by 3:30. So it was an unbelievable thing to do.
Well done by the Jets and the Hawks. Really was a lot of emotions that night. It was an awful tragedy, but the NHL, I think, recognized it beautifully and handled it wonderfully. So, all right, back to the night at hand here. Scotty, so this night happens for you. You are the story of sports. Not for the day, for the week, maybe for the month. So I was really interested in seeing how you handled it, which was, pretty much, I think, to go underground. I think a lot of people who would have gotten thrown into that situation, everybody who's ever laced up a pair of skates dreams about this. Yeah, I could do that. I could get it. If I was in an NHL game, I could make it happen. Well, he does. He's John Q. Public, who walks on an NHL ice surface, stops every shot he faces, preserves a win. He's the star of the game. guess what? Everybody, ESPN wants him, CNN, everybody wants him. Good Morning America's looking for him. And nobody could get to you. I believe that most of the people that got thrown into that situation would have been, oh yeah, they'd be like a moth going to the next light, you know? You didn't do that. Talk us through that, what that decision was.
You know, I think I left the United Center that night. You have no idea what's going to happen with this story. Maybe that's naive in the world today, but I had a conversation with Adam Rogwin and his staff, and I just said, you know, this was an awesome night. You know, I did media that night, but I'm good. I think the story is what it is. I don't know what else I can add to it. So, you know, you can just respectfully decline requests that come in. I said the same thing to my work. You know, you can probably do the math that you name it, media probably tried to contact you in some fashion, so I gave them the same directive because it was intense. I mean, we had media crews on our front lawn. We had people showing up at work, calling, texting, you name it. So it was just one of those things where you're completely unprepared to handle it, so you just step away.
So you did an article in the Tribune the other day, yesterday maybe. You're here for this weekend. Did it take this long for you to be comfortable and sort of tell a little bit more of your story?
Yeah, I think it got to the point where it was time to talk about that night through my words and my eyes. And you see enough things written, and it's other people's stories, or they're piecing things together. But you know, you lived it, and I still get a lot of questions. You know, it gets brought up all the time about what happened, and so there seemed to be a desire for people to know what it was like to live that moment. So it was time to tell it, especially like to the fans there that night, and all the people that again come and talk to you. Like, just it was an unbelievable thing to live through, and the amount of times you hear people, you know, I bring my baseball glove to Cubs games or Sox games, and I would love nothing more than to jump into that game, and you lived that moment. So it was time to tell what that moment was like.
So, I mean, what do you tell people? I mean, what was the night like? Have you even processed everything that happened? And start with, did anything funny happen? Anybody chirp you or you know, say anything that was anything that was funny?
I remember a couple distinct things that happened. One, right when you get out, you get out on the ice, you're taking these warm-up shots, and you know, the guys ask, like, do you want any more warm-up? And you're like, what honestly at this point is warm-up gonna do? Like, you know, you're not gonna become a NHL skilled goaltender in 12 shots. So we just kind of shrugged that off, and I remember a short time after that, one of the referees that night comes skating around the net, and he's like, "How about this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, how about this?" Like, so it's really random things that you would think back to when you were playing, and you're playing competitive hockey. All these things that you would shut out your mind, and how you approach the game, and now you're sitting, or you're standing on the ice in front of 22,000 people, and the little things that you never thought about. I think I talked about recently, like the ice crew comes out. Why is that a big deal? The ice crew, you just move, but like I don't have people cleaning the ice at Johnny's mid like periods or anything. So you know, you try to act cool, and like I'll go left. I'm gonna go left on the first intermission, and then I'm like, oh, I got this. I'm gonna go right on the second intermission. And, you know, you don't just random things that are completely irrelevant, but you know, you made a huge deal out of it in your head at the time.
So the next game you play at Johnny's, who scored on you that night? They had to be chirping like hell.
Yeah, that didn't go great. Yeah, I don't even know if I stopped my first shot, to be honest with you. I think, you know, before the game, we had a lot of good laughs in the room. You know, the guys obviously had a lot of questions, but it was all in good fun. It was, again, right back to a bunch of hockey guys that just they want to hear the funny behind the scenes stuff. They don't really care about what happened on the ice. I mean, you got to live. You know, I think there's some of those guys that still think they're scouts sitting up at Johnny's. I don't think this event helped that idea much, but yeah, I mean, it was great to be back, and all the guys that play down there are phenomenal, and we had a lot of good fun, and you know, you can go back. You can go back to just being like your normal self with the group of guys that you play with, you know, on a week-to-week basis, and you can head up to the Stanley Club after the game, and you know, just kind of relive the moment, and you can get back to. It's just one of those things that kind of gets you back to being you.
How long after that night was it before you had a good sleep?
Whew. Have I had a good sleep since, maybe? Yeah, that first night home was, I definitely didn't sleep a wink. I got up in the morning, I use that term loosely, I just, you know, I got back to work because it was the only thing I could think to do that was normal. I didn't know, like, do I call in sick today, or like, how do you approach this story? Like, I probably can't come up with like a great lie that I got the flu or something. So the first thing I did, turn the game on. You know, I fast forward through the first 46 minutes because, and then
already seen that.
Yeah, I watched that one, and I think it was just it was kind of, did this happen? What don't I remember? Which was probably a lot, and just like, yeah, that wasn't that really did happen to me, and then it was, all right, see you guys. Like, I got to catch a train. I got to get to work. So it was something.
So, dude, I think everybody could see in the end of that video, at the end of the game, we got a pretty close-up shot. It's not easy to see through the mask, but you looked, I think it was Murph coming up to you. You looked at him like, really? Did that just happen?
Yeah, and that's exactly the thought that went through my head. I remember turning my head to the left, and he's got this giant grin on his face, and you know, he's probably like 8 inches taller than me, so I don't know what's going to happen here, and the only thing that was just like, yep, yeah, we did this. Like, I think everything's in one piece still, so, you know, yeah, wow.
Awesome. Jimmy, in your career, any situations like this that were sort of unexpected or kind of weird that you got thrown into or not?
No, I really don't recall anything like this in my career. I mean, it's one of these things that seems to happen a few times lately. You know, like in Florida, it happened with a few injuries there. The goalie coach actually had to dress. Since then, we're not allowed since last year. I actually came pretty close to dressing in Philly. You talk about Philadelphia, and I was thinking I'm the one going in for sure. And then, but they could afford me because we're a former pro. You have to be on the cap for the league minimum, and we couldn't afford it. We were right at the cap, so I was too expensive for them. So that's where it is.
But you know, that's exactly why the rule now is that it's got to be an amateur goalie as the emergency guy. For that reason, so many teams are up against the cap. Any goalie who ever played a professional game anywhere in any pro league, if he were to be used by an NHL team, he has to get in there on the league minimum, which is now $650. So, you know, an expensive proposition. So anyway, a lot of teams can't afford it. That's why the rule now is have amateur guys available, and so that's the way it went.
Would have been nice to have a paycheck, one-day paycheck like that, but
yeah, right.
I need a better agent.
Accountant, agent, you know, put another slash in there. Who knows what's coming next? Who are your favorite goalies to watch now, Scotty? And like when you were a kid, who did you like watching?
I was probably more on the obscure side because of just like how equipment looked. So I was like a big Trevor Kidd fan. You know, kind of the little bit more unknown to most people, but yeah, I think it changes how you look at the game now. Like I enjoy watching hockey. I think there's a bunch of guys in the league. You know, it's a great perspective now to watch. You sit up in the press box and you see some of these guys, like you're watching Crawford like early in the season, and you just realize like how their skill set is amazing. But yeah, I remember like growing up, I liked an old goalie from Toronto named Alan Bester, huge 5-hole, with the old brown equipment and stuff. It was some of those guys. It was never about like what they did in games or anything like that. It was always about the equipment.
I have a question. Like last night, Scotty, we talked about how different it is to play in a big building compared to Johnny's. So you want to talk about that a little bit? Your experience?
It's funny. You play down at Johnny's Ice House, and you know it's just walls around you, and to say there's nobody there is not an understatement. And now all of a sudden you're in the United Center, and you know the lights are bright, and you got people up against the glass, banging on the glass. Like the tracking a puck's a little different. Not to mention the guys are a little bit better at shooting. I don't want any of the guys down at Johnny's to hear that. So maybe we can edit that out of video or something. But yeah, it's a whole different like concept stepping out onto that ice, and it's been a long time. Like college, you'd play in some of the bigger buildings, but yeah, when the like pucks coming through traffic, those guys are enormous, and you're just trying to find the puck and hope maybe you can get something in front of it. But it's a completely different experience.
Is it that different? Like in the game that you played, NHL coaches, every one of them says the same thing, traffic in front of the net. I mean, do guys at Johnny's play that way, or is it a little bit more open in front of you there?
Yeah, it's going to be, if they block a shot, it was probably on accident. And the guys that are willing to stand in front of the net, you know that they're probably the ones that are a little bit maybe off the rocker. So it's different. I mean, guys are getting up for day jobs the next day. So the idea that you're going to take a puck in the face, maybe that doesn't seem as appealing when it's not gonna bring home a paycheck for you.
Yeah. We have a question from Mallory who says, "Do you have any pregame routine?"
Apparently it's changed over time to head into work and picking up the kids and getting that all organized. Yeah, it was probably very routine oriented when I was playing back in the day, but not so much anymore. I think there's too many variables now with a couple young kids and stuff. They're gonna insert themselves into any routine you think you're gonna make. So now it's just about having fun. You just get out and you just play hockey.
By the way, you mentioned your kids, your family's here. It's a big weekend for you. It's a big weekend for them. Why don't you introduce us to them?
Oh, we got my mom and dad are here. My wife Erin and my daughters Morgan and Winifred. I got all my in-laws from my father-in-law Mike and my mother-in-law Ramona, my sister-in-law Amanda and Jeff, and my brother-in-law Mike, my nephew William, and a family friend Mike. So yeah, they came out in full force. Yeah, got 'em all.
That's awesome. Well, again, we're here for you guys. If anybody got a quick question, we'll be happy to take one. And if not, I have a question for Parchia. You're not in charge of this, but I think it should be considered that maybe the Blackhawks want to think about retiring number 90, you know? Come on. I think any of the other emergency guys got to find a different number for him, you know, whatever it is. I don't think we can use 90 again, can we?
Well, I sort of make the decisions on the numbers, so I could probably do that. But
Attaboy. All right. I love it. Yes.
Yeah, that comes back to the whole idea about amateur versus professional. So you're just signing an amateur agreement for that night, and I've said this before. It's never really about any money. I mean, it's an experience. Again, you're putting on an NHL jersey, and that in itself is probably priceless.
Well, listen, we hope you enjoyed this session. We want to say thanks for coming out to this and to the Blackhawks convention. Hope you guys are having a good weekend. We are. I think Mr. Foster is. I hope he is. And enjoy it with your family. But again, thanks everybody. Parchi, Bernie, Jimmy, and number 90 forever, Scott Foster.